Hey, America's the greatest country in the world. Welcome to our special attack on Israel 1 year later. Man, it's been a year since that terrorist attack against Israel. Man, one thing I need to remind myself is that things take time. I remember when this first happened, when Hamas attacked Israel, and I thought Israel would respond immediately and Hamas would be dead and that would be the end of it by the weekend. I remember the same thing when Russia attacked Ukraine, that this thing would be over in 2 weeks. I remember the same thing with Iraq. we were told I was shock and awe, this thing will be over. And in no time, and all these things drag out for many, many years. It's very interesting. I wonder where that comes from. My theory is it's something like when we go back, like, remember like in high school or middle school, you have your history book, your textbook. They even have textbooks like that anymore. So you have your textbook, and World War II got 5 pages. So we read about World War II for 5 pages, and then we start to think that World War II lasted as long as it takes to read about it. You know, like World War II lasted 8 minutes. And it's like, no, it was like many years. And same thing, like we read about like the Renaissance. Like, well, the Renaissance was 300 years. So like we think these things are going to get over quick, but they don't. They take a long time. So a year has gone by. You know, there's still Americans. A year went by. 1 year. Listen, what's one of our principles in America? Never leave a man behind. For a year, there were 4 Americans held hostage, not getting anywhere near the attention that they deserved, purely for political reasons, by the way, to protect Joe Biden and Kamala and the Democrats in charge. So it wasn't just Israelis who were killed, and it wasn't just Israelis who were taken hostage, Americans as well. We forget about that, or we haven't been properly told about that. So anyway, let's just refresh our memory. So early in the morning on October 7th, 2023, Hamas launched 4,300 rockets into Israel. Then Hamas terrorists paraglided over some walls and fences and made it through in many other places as well, and started massacring civilians in 21 different communities. It's believed that 6,000 members of Hamas breached the border, with another 1,000 on their side of the border launching whatever weapons they could into Israel. But so 7,000 total in the attack, but 6,000 in particular breaching the border in 119 different places. Ended up killing 1,139 people. 71 were from other countries, not just Israel. That music festival, do you remember the music festival in particular? 364 people were killed at that music festival. Many women raped as well, but Hamas denied it. And then our media covered for them. I'll never forget that. Leftists in America covering for Hamas, being like, no, there's no proof that any women were raped. Meanwhile, here's a picture of a woman that was obviously raped. But I just love this idea, like that would be a bridge too far for Hamas. Sure, maybe they'll go across and kill all these Jewish people in cold blood, and then parade their bodies through the streets and keep many of them hostage in tunnels for a year, but they would never go so far as to rape anyone. Come on. What do you think they're like a bunch of monsters or something? Hamas killed 11 Americans that day. 10 were initially taken hostage. 3 were killed later in that day. A mother and daughter from Illinois were released a few weeks later. And then another American was killed in August. It was the man whose parents spoke at the Democratic convention just a couple weeks before that. And he was killed execution style. Keep in mind, Kamala has been resisting. We'll talk more about this with Joel Pollack in a little bit, but resisting any Israelis' response, like a proper response of people who want victory. And she's like, no, you can't go into Rafah. I've studied the maps, she said. Here's that clip.
We have been clear in multiple conversations and in every way that any major military operation in Rafah would be a huge mistake. Let me tell you something. I have studied the maps. There's nowhere for those folks to go.
Yeah, she studied the maps, pressuring Israel to not attack Gaza anymore. There's no place for the people of Gaza to go. All of this aiding and abetting the terrorists. Then don't forget the college campus protests across the country, all in support of Hamas. amazing? The quick of that, just so we know the worldview that these people are operating under, this is a worldview that's been driven into the minds and souls of young people across our country. It's the Marxist worldview, oppressor and oppressed. Everything is that prism of oppressor and oppressed. So the Israelis, because they have a strong military and they're the economic superpower of the region, of course, they're the oppressors. They can do no right. And everyone else is the oppressed. So the Gazans are poor, for many, mostly by their own choice, but they're poor, therefore they are the oppressed. So Israel is the oppressors, the Gazans are the oppressed. Oppressed people can do no wrong, including killing civilians in Israel, right? That's just them responding to the occupation of the oppressors, right? That's just the freedom fighters of God, right? That kind of thing, right? So you had all these young fools just come out, or worse, by the way, but at the very least fools, come out and support Hamas on American college campuses. And my favorite part was like pretending to be in solidarity with the people of Gaza by making these encampments. This was my favorite example of this cosplaying as oppressor, as the oppressed. That's what they were pretending to be the oppressed. This is at Columbia University near the end of their encampments. And I say end because it was almost graduation time, so the university finally had to crack down and it was the end of the school year. But they shut themselves into a building. They took over a building and they threatened to keep the janitors hostage, which is just hilarious, that you have these privileged white people at Columbia keeping black janitors hostage. But then one of the students, a spokesperson for the student group, went outside and said the university should bring them food, deliver them food from the dining hall, which is just down the block. And here's what she said.
Well, I guess it's ultimately a question of what kind of community and obligation Columbia feels it has to its students. Do you want students to die of dehydration and starvation or get severely ill, even if they disagree with you? If the answer is no, then you should allow it's crazy to say because we're on an Ivy League campus, but this is like basic humanitarian aid we're asking for. Like, could people please have a glass of water?
Right, there's so much there, but calling food from the dining hall humanitarian aid, absurd. But it's not just stupid college students, it's all the way to the top of our very own government. Our government discouraging Israeli victory. Here's the great Douglas Murray.
And they have been decimated by Hezbollah, by the Shiite militia of Iran in Lebanon. And Israel goes in to get Hezbollah out, and the American government says ceasefire? No, not ceasefire, victory. Should always have been about victory. You cannot keep fighting wars that you're not allowed to win. And that's what I said from the very first moment after the 7th. Every single time Israel is made to fight wars it is not allowed to win. We in the international community were expected to see it as normal that every 15 to 20 years Israel had to fight a war in southern Lebanon. Every 2 to 3 years it had to fight a war in Gaza. Why? Every single time because the international community, including American administrations, tried to stop them and did stop them before the moment of victory. There was an Israeli politician and general who I spoke with early in this conflict who said, I had the opportunity to snuff out Hamas entirely in 2010, and I was pulled back by my government at the demand of the American government and the international community. Well done those people. Well done the people who sustained that status quo. It meant we had war after war, and now they have this. This is the fruit of their labor.
All we ever hear about this last year, all we've heard about is de-escalation. Oh, whatever you do, don't escalate things. Maybe we need to escalate sometimes, because Hamas chose this war. They chose the time, the place. We need to let Israel finish it. But the rot's everywhere. It's not just in Israel, and it's not just a rot around the world that's focused on attacking Israel. That rot is here as well. The top Hamas leadership, they're all billionaires living in Qatar. Now check this out. This is a commentator on BBC, employed by the BBC. This person says the international community has to make sure that whatever Israel does is not upending the regional order as we now know it, okay? This is like the regional order was Hamas going in and killing over 1,000 Israelis. That's the regional order. We've been in this for 12 months now of constant red lines being crossed, mostly by the Israelis. Are you kidding me? Hezbollah and Iran have played it fairly rationally, trying to always be cautious in how they respond. Okay, that's pure propaganda. Now, where does that come from? So that guy is now a professor at King's College in London. He worked for 4 years for the Qatari government. King's College has received $35 million from the Qatari government. And they're now able to spread their straight terrorist propaganda with whatever credibility is left at King's College. That is the same thing in America. Now that guy works at BBC, or also works at BBC, and is able to spread the propaganda there. The same thing in America. The country of Qatar contributes more money to Ivy League schools than any other foreign government. Now, maybe we should have a conversation about why foreign governments are investing, they're not investing, well, I guess it's an investment from their perspective, but putting money into Ivy League colleges at all, like, that's kind of weird, but whatever. The country that does the most is Qatar. Qatar has a population of 2.5 million people. It's like a medium-sized city in America. That's the entire country. They've given almost $5 billion over the last 20 years to American universities. And you wonder why so many Ivy League presidents were so cautious to say anything against their Hamas overlords. Why the Ivy League presidents were so careful to call anything anti-Semitic. This terrorist rot is thoroughly throughout our country as well. It's not just focused on attacking Israel, it's all throughout our country too.